This is The Roadmap with Ted Jenkin.
Hey everybody, this is Ted Jenkin and welcome to The Roadmap. I've got on a great guest today, Elizabeth Elrod, the CEO of Decimal Bookkeeping, because bookkeeping is such an important part, Elizabeth, of a business owner's life. So I just want to know, first of all, how did you even get into accounting and bookkeeping? How did this start?
Well, it's really kind of funny. I actually was impressed. It was all because I was impressed by my cousin's friend who happened to be in accounting, and she was driving a brand new Honda Prelude.
And at that time, that was a good car.
Yeah, I'm dating myself. And so I just started talking to her about accounting and what you did, and it really interested me. And at the time, I was not happy with my major in college for early childhood education. So I was like, I need to switch this. And I thought, well, let's try a business degree with an emphasis on accounting, and here I am.
And so did you work in an accounting firm to start? Is that how it started? You worked as a CPA or worked in an accounting firm?
Yeah, I started out in public accounting right after I got out of college. Well, actually, I went and got my master's in tax and then started in public accounting because I didn't want to be an auditor. So I wanted to get more into the specification of doing tax returns. And so yeah, I was in public accounting for probably 15 years.
So what spurred this idea? Because I think for a lot of people that are business owners at home, there's a big difference sometimes in having a CPA and a big difference of having a bookkeeper, and sometimes CPA firms also do the bookkeeping. But why did you decide to go down this route of just doing bookkeeping and not really preparing tax returns?
Well, I enjoyed doing tax returns all throughout my career, and I would get lots of sets of books from people who business owners that thought they knew what they were doing, putting their books together, and it was just trash. You just had to crumple it up, throw it away, start all over. So I thought, just dealing with family and stuff, I had to get out of the public accounting tax season. That was just getting...
It's a grind, right? Those 4 months or whatever, and then when you get to extensions, it's just a grind preparing tax returns.
So I thought, with my experience and knowledge of what the accounting firm wants to see when they're putting together a business tax return, I thought, I can do this from home and still take care of my family, and so that's what got it started.
Now, I feel like in the marketplace, I've seen all kinds of different business models. I think some of the big CPA firms might charge people $100 or $200 an hour potentially to have a bookkeeper that comes in there. I've seen models that say online that you can offshore this and do it in another country for $30 a month. But I mean, how do you price out the services of bookkeeping, and how do you determine, what a business needs?
Well, just like you said, it just took a little research, looking at what current firms were charging for the various services for bookkeeping services. And then with my knowledge of being in public accounting and knowing what they were charging and how expensive it could be if you're trying to get bookkeeping services through your CPA.
When's the right time for somebody to start books? I've always felt when I started companies that it's important to have some set of books to start, but there are a lot of people out there now that are independent consultants. I remember you telling me that you work with somebody who sells soap or other stuff on Etsy, but a lot of people are on eBay, and they have a business now, especially the way the IRS is starting to look at it, changing the rules. When's the right time for somebody to just do like a Schedule C where they're just filling out their expenses or getting a real legitimate set of books?
Doing a Schedule C and just maybe your very first year, but you still, even just it being a Schedule C, if you're not a corporation like S Corp or LLC, you still need to have your financial activity organized and in a reportable so when you get to the end of the year and you're preparing your Schedule C, you know exactly, okay, this is my gross income, these are all my expenses that came out, instead of keeping a shoebox.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it, because even if you do get a set of books, one of the things that you're mentioning is that if you're in any kind of business, there are a lot of books that I've seen when I have sold businesses where the whole line item for revenue says sales or it just says income. And it's important if you're working with a bookkeeper or even a CPA, but a lot of times with your bookkeeper, right? To start to try to segment that out, that if I basically sell 4 kinds of products or services, to try to lay that out, because when you sell that business down the road, somebody's got to be able to look at those sets of books, and they will, to say, what am I looking at here? Like, what am I buying?
Right, right. And in addition to that, you can see, okay, well, I had sales of soap and sales of lotion and the expenses associated with each of those sales,
Sure.
You can monitor your expenses and say, well, no, I need to move expenses from this product to this product because I make more money off this product, or just helps you.
And the truth is, folks, that when you go to a private equity company, they're going to ask you these questions. How do your COGS match against that specific revenue? Or how much do you do in new construction, or what's existing business? They're gonna ask these kinds of questions. When you're building out the P&L in general, it's really important to set the general ledger up the right way, right? Because what you're talking about is how you can have a problem down the road is if you miscategorize loans you may have made to the business, or you miscategorize how distributions are made to partners. It can get really tricky, and when someone wants to buy that down the road, it's like, this all doesn't make sense. And I find there are a lot of owners, when they go to market, they've got to spend a lot of money and time doing patchwork, like taking apart the entire car and putting it back together, rather than hiring somebody like you and making sure it all looks clean and right before they sell the business.
Right, and I do run into a lot of that with business owners that come to me. They've been doing their books on their own for a year or more, and I think, oh no. Not good. But
and is that because they've set up the general ledger wrong?
Yes, and they'll say, well, I've made, they get to the end of the year and they see their bottom line, they're like, well, wait a minute, why? I thought I had a loss this year. No, because you were taking distributions and putting them on the P&L when they go on the balance sheet. That's that's not a deduction. You should have been paying yourself a salary.
Yeah, and I know that because you see a lot of books today, there's so many phishing schemes or email schemes online where I feel like I get one once a week that say, from an employee of mine that's not really an employee, it's a fake email that says, I need to change my deductions on payroll. When you're doing payroll for a company, like, how do you look for that kind of stuff? Because I feel like it's a scamming world out there today.
Yeah, generally if I get anything like that, if I'm helping out with payroll, I will call that particular employee and say, hey, did you just send me this email that you want to change your direct deposit?
Right.
Usually most of the time I already know it's fake, but I just want to confirm, hey, I don't want to ignore this.
So when you do payroll, do you recommend a payroll system? Have you used a lot of them? There are big ones out there like ADP and Paychex. I feel like there are a lot of small ones that are a dime a dozen. You don't know the name, but they say they're cheaper than ADP or Paychex. Is there a benefit of you just trying to do the payroll yourself and escrowing the money and sending it to the government versus dealing with an ADP? Do you have any lens on that for people watching?
Oh yeah, it's definitely worth the cost to get a payroll company to run your payroll, because at the end of the year they send out the W-2s, the 1099s. You don't have to worry about any of the filing deadlines. Payroll companies will make sure you get your quarterly payroll estimates paid, and I run into a lot of businesses that get their primary notices from the IRS are, you didn't make these quarterly payments, you made this quarterly payment was too small, so you owe us interest, penalties.
Right.
And it can even be years, 2 years ago, and so all the interest and penalties piles up, and it's another big cost for the business owner. So the cost of payroll services.
I said, folks, and when you sell your business down the road, you're going to have to get tax clearance letters from the state and all kinds of things like that. So if those things aren't in order, you could have the best business in the world, but it could stop you from making a sale in the business. Do you like one bookkeeping system over another? I know you've used a lot of them throughout the years.
No, they all do the same thing, and it's just mainly knowing the nuances of each one, because maybe in QuickBooks you enter a transaction one way and it affects this and this and this account, but you do the same thing in NetSuite, and so you just have to kind of know what makes them tick.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is it hard to retain bookkeepers once you get them? Is it hard to keep them around? Especially it feels like it's a very remote job today, that a lot of bookkeeping companies aren't there, and I know that you've got a lot of remote workers. How do you try to manage that when you've got 5, 10 different bookkeepers doing remote work?
Just with once a week touch calls, hey, what's going on with this client? How's it going? Are you running into any roadblocks that I can help you with? And because a lot of my staff, they do call me and go, hey, this transaction happened. What's the best way to report it? And I can help them with that. And I have, retention of my staff people has been pretty easy because everybody's remote. It's very flexible, and
Right. They're happy. They're getting paid some money and doing some books. And I know there's a lot of, part-timers in this business, right? Both part-time men and women that may stay at home or they're looking to pick up some extra money. It's such a great job. And with more businesses growing in America, I feel like this field is going to grow. What do you see the biggest mistake when you come across a new set of books that business owners make in their books?
Just like what we discussed earlier is, they think a distribution is a deduction on the income statement, and they just don't understand, with accounting, there's two sides to every entry. And it's, a lot of times I'll get, well, I transferred this money into my personal account. Can't you just, I want to call it my business savings account. Can't you just put it on there? And I'm like, well, we gotta, there's a left and a right side here. So
a lot of business owners think if I have $10,000 of cash in my business bank account and I move it to my personal account and that's a distribution, I can deduct that from my profit and loss statement, which in fact you cannot.
Right.
And that's the big problem. People think distributions are deductions.
Right. They cannot understand.
Very, very interesting. Folks that are watching today, whether they want a job as a bookkeeper or they're looking for a bookkeeper, how can folks get in touch with you and learn more about what you do?
I've got my website, decimalbookkeeping.com. I'm on LinkedIn. Reach out, send me a message, even on Facebook.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks for that valuable information. Folks, I've owned at least a dozen businesses. I don't know how many LLCs I have right now, but I can tell you this, that it is so important to get your books in order. You should be reviewing your profit and loss statement and your balance sheet every single month. Look at your year-over-year trends. This is the way that you become a better business manager and figure out how to fix those forest fires before they actually become big forest fires. Elizabeth, again, thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks, folks, for joining us every week right here on The Roadmap, exclusively on America's Small Business Network. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching The Roadmap with Ted Jenkins.